Hello, music makers. Welcome back. What is a plot? In my video called The #1 Scientific Reason You Can't Finish Tracks, I mentioned plots were a good way of finishing tracks much faster, but arguably they're even better for starting tracks. So as I'm getting lots of questions on starting and finishing tracks recently, let me show you how I work with plots. Let's go. So here's one of my plot projects. As I mentioned, they can be great for starting or finishing tracks. In this particular case, I made this plot to study a genre, what was being called stutter house. Basically, I've just made lots of little 16-bar sections, roughly recreating the drops of a few different references. Now, don't panic. To make this work, you don't need to go as far as me. Like, I've got 7 references here. You don't need 7. It's not some magic number. You just really need more than 1. This is just what happens after lots of practice, and you get faster at things. So, if you didn't see the stutter house video, let me give you a quick overview of the references. Here's bicep glue. Chainsmokers The Fall. Free Jack, Sol Densera. Otto Knows, Rosa. Silk, Quiver. Desco, Ascend. And even though it didn't turn out to be stutter house, I started with Fred Again's Maria. Now, that sounds like a lot of work, doesn't it? But they're not actually that close to the references. Let me see if I can show you without YouTube getting upset. It's quite a lot of sound difference. So some are closer than others, obviously, but the idea was just to get a rough idea of what the genre is about. And crucially, it doesn't involve all the work of trying to recreate 7 full tracks. Not just because I've only made 16 bars of the drop, but I've been very efficient with the sounds as well. Let me show you how I approach it. Let's imagine for a second that my first reference was Biceps Glue. What parts can I hear in there? It's got an 808 kick drum. There's a break. There's a pad. And the stuttered vocal. Fairly easy one to start with. Just those 4 main components. I do have a quiet clap here backing that snare up, but the point is to gather those 4 things, even if they're not exact to the original. Kick, break, pad, vocal. Now, if we look at Fred Again as our next one, what does that have? Does it have an 808 kick? No, it's more of a house kick drum. So I can't use the same kick, but does it have a pad? Yes. So it's a fairly background type of pad. I don't need to go and grab another pad. I could just reuse the same one I grabbed for bicep, maybe change the filter if needed. Obviously the chords will be different, but that's all I need to do there. So what else is in there? Fred Again also has a break. So for this, I'm just reusing the same break I used for the bicep loop. Well, I've chopped it up in a slightly different order, but it's the same break sample. My plot so far already has that ingredient, so I don't need to go get another one. So I just keep doing that, gathering more ingredients. Let's look at the Otto Knows loop next. that also had a kind of houseier kick, so I've just kept the same kick drum, no alterations. Even though they're completely different in the original records, the vibe is essentially the same and I've got that ingredient already. The track also had a pad in there, so I can reuse the same pad I had from Bicep and Fred Again, although this record had it layered with a piano. So I add a piano track to the ingredients. This track also has some break-style hits in the drums. So I already have that ingredient, let's just reuse that. There's some extra hi-hats that Fred Again didn't have, and also this one adds a shaker. So like I say, all I'm doing here is just gathering ingredients. If I can reuse a sound, I will. Like a clap or a hi-hat. I don't care if they sound too close to the original. I can always just change the pitch or the length. As you can see on this hi-hat, this red dot indicates that I have automated the release parameter. So for some of these loops, it will be longer. But whether it's short or long, bright or dull, high or low, it's still the same sample. So I've got one kind of Frankenstein kit across the genre, instead of 7 different ones. And when it comes to things like the bass, the Desco and Fred Again are sharing a Reese-style pad bass. Again, that will be mixed very differently in the original records, but in terms of vibe, I just know I need a Reese-style pad bass. Looking at my pads, I managed to do all the plots in 5 different possible layers. For example, the free jack pad couldn't be done with the synth I used for the Bicep and Fred Again, etc. I had to add some strings. There was an organ in the Silk track. So between the synths, strings, organ, and piano, that was all my pad sounds covered. As for lead sounds, only 2 of the tracks had them in. Fred Again has that quirky synth, and the Desco track had a bendy flute synth thing. So you should be getting the idea by now. We're going to end up with lots of different little parts. We've got some different grooves, we've got some different bass styles, we've got some different musical ideas, chord progressions. But for my purposes, I know they all work within this one genre. Now, I'm sure a few of you are thinking, but Ben, I can't do that. I don't have your ear training. I can't recreate all those parts like you do. And you're right. Most people can't, in fact. But don't worry. I'm not saying be verbatim like I am here. The point of this exercise is to make things faster and easier for you in the future. So all I'm saying in your instance is you just match the vibe with whatever you can find that is close, samples included. If you can hear a pad type sound in your reference track, then just grab a pad. Type pad into your favorite synth for presets or a sample service like Splice, just whatever gives you similar vibes. Vibes being the operative word. It doesn't have to sound exact. So what do we do once we've gathered our ingredients? Let's cook, of course. It's a new day. We return to our plot, and now we can play Legos or paint the canvas with our pre-chosen colors, whatever analogy works for you best. In other words, now we get to pick and choose our favorite bits and mash them all up into one new idea. So this loop over here, this is all my favorite bits. It's what you heard in the intro to this video. Let me show you what is what. So we have the kick, the one kick. Remember, I just had the one kick drum I used for all the housey stuff and the 808 for Bicep. So this is the house kick. The claps and the break are from what I pulled together for the Fred Again groove. But the hi-hats were from the Silk track. They had a nice, strong, bright offbeat. They sound like this. As for the bass, I liked the Otto Nose vibe best. You can see the color match there. I've literally dragged the MIDI part across and then changed the notes to my new chords. It's a new bass line, but I still did take influence from the way they had these note jumps at the end of the chord changes, the turnarounds. You can see I've done a similar thing here. I really liked that vibe. I also kept the same level of swing and got the drums to match that. I've got some extra gaps in my stutter pattern though, gaps for groove. And here's the pad. This is a mixture of the sound I used for bicep and fret, and also layered in is the Techno pad that added a nice thickness. New chords, of course, to match the bass. And I liked the fluty, bendy lead thing from the Techno track, so that's in there, but it's stuttered this time. Again, my notes, but similar style. A vocal part, stuttering again. And this is just the pattern that's triggering all the stuttering, and also locking in my global swing. By the way, another great advantage of this approach is because we've been referencing a few different tracks, at the sound collection and sound design stage, you'll tend to find that your track falls somewhere in the middle. So you shouldn't really have to worry much about the mix at all. And if you watch my video on why you might not need to master anything, then your track might be closer to finished than you realized. On my video about track feedback, Alpha8902 asked, "The background track is great. Where can I buy it?" And I'm sorry to say, it's not finished yet, but any of you who watched both that video and the Stutter House video might recognize it. The track in the background was a loop I threw together based around that intro arrangement from this plot. I think I changed the chord, but thanks for reminding me. I'm going to make a proper arrangement of it and get it shipped to stores as soon as possible for you, Alpha. Now, if you want to see me make that arrangement in a video, let me know. And while you're on your way down there to the comments, don't forget to press one of those buttons that helps me out. And until next week, I will probably see you down there in the comments. Bye-bye.